I'm Brad Coulter, and this is Looking Back. My story this week is called An Intersection of Misfortune. The year 1918 was a tumultuous year for our country. The city of Connersville was subject to many tragedies of all kinds. One East Connersville junction that today is one of the busiest was a century ago exposed to many devastating events in a one-year period. The intersection of Vine Street and Patay Street had seen its share of sadness. Edward Enos, an early East Side business, had developed this area. Patay Street, now named McCann, was given its name in memory of his mother-in-law, who was from France. In 1901, a Halloween prank gone wrong had seen the death of a local youth playing a game called tic-tacking. This prank would involve the throwing of corn kernels at windows and annoying the occupants. Roy Williams lost his life as the resident fired a warning shot that Roy jumped into. The first tragedy of 1918 occurred on the 21st of February at the home on the northwest corner. The Henry Bragg family lost their son, George, age 19. George had graduated from CHS in 1917 and was to begin study at Purdue in the field of pharmacy in the fall. He was working at the corner drugstore and cut his hand in the early part of the month. Over the next week, it became infected and he was diagnosed with blood poisoning. Very quickly, it became clear he could lose his arm and maybe even his life. He was taken to the hospital and emergency surgery was unable to save him. His funeral at First Methodist Church was attended by 700 mourners. It had been moved from East Side Church due to its size. George was a member of the Fayette County Liberty Guard. The Liberty Guard was enacted during World War I to protect the homeland during the overseas conflict. Several local companies were formed and he was in Company B. 200 Liberty Guardsmen were in attendance, commanded by Frederick Barrows, who led the procession. Also, a large delegation of his classmates marched in together, led by pallbearers Lewis Heave and Ben Henry. The next blows occurred on the northeast corner where the Connersville Utilities is located. In the spring of 1918, something seemed odd with Miss Ida Eskew. Her beau, Marion Darnell, had not been seen as often at her home a few doors down from his on Vine Street. Their friends had thought their 7 years of keeping company would culminate in marriage, but by summer things had gone awry. On July 8th, it came to a boiling point, and that morning, as Mr. Darnell walked by, he was asked by Ida to come inside. He saw that something was horribly wrong as she asked him to sit with her for a bit. He summoned the neighbors, who found a bottle of carbolic acid nearby. Dr. Mountain was sent for, but by the time he could get there, she was gone. Ida was 51 years old and was well thought of in East Side. Since the beginning of the war, she had been volunteering with the Red Cross and was always the first one to show up for a charity drive or if someone was ill and needed nursing. Her father, Robert, was devastated by his daughter's suicide, and it was feared that Robert, who was age 79, might not survive the heartbreak. Only 3 weeks later, he passed away. Robert Eskew was described as an agriculturist who was widely known, respected, and one in whom men placed their trust. In early October, Winfield Scott Miller became very ill. The Miller family lived on the southwest corner of the tragic intersection. He had been in failing health for a time, but had been holding his own lately. On the 6th day of the month, he died peacefully in the morning. His son Clyde operated the grocery at the corner of 5th and Vine Street. Until a few years later, East Connersville was still a town and separate from the city. 5th Street at that time in East Side was called Main Street. Clyde's grocery business put him in contact with hundreds of customers each day. His happy disposition earned the 31-year-old storekeeper many friends, and he was widely admired. By the fall, the influenza pandemic was ravaging the country. Over 50 million Americans contracted influenza, and over 675,000 died in the U.S. alone. Many locals were ill with this dread, and by the time of his father's funeral, Clyde had it too. Through mid-October, he was able to work, but soon he and his store clerks were all very ill, and temporary help had to be brought in. Tragically, on October 21st, young Clyde succumbed, and the neighborhood again went to the church for a funeral. James McCann was a very well-known member of the Connersville business community. He had been in the mill business and had produced many products widely used in the area, including flour. He was a member of the board of directors of the Farmers and Merchants Bank and was on various boards and committees. His money and expertise were much desired on local ventures, and he was quite wealthy. The 69-year-old businessman had been in failing health for over a year. In several months, he had scarcely left his home. A visit from his daughter caused him to rally around the holidays, but on December 20th, he was taken from life. In the fourth corner of the intersection, had crepe hung on the door. Even though his death was not unexpected, this sixth deadly blow to the neighbors was hard to take. He was buried in Delta Cemetery, where he had been a charter member of the board. His daughter donated a plot of land behind the utilities office, and a playground was constructed there for the children of East Connersville. In the July of 1921, McCann Playground was dedicated, and it was a fixture in the area for many years. At some point later, Pate Street was also given his name. Over 100 years have passed since this odd and tragic string of events, but even with the passage of time, it's not hard to imagine the sorrow and the sadness that was felt in this little neighborhood so many years ago.